In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about 4 tips for pain-free sitting. Now, first of all, we are going to talk about the problem with sitting up straight. It's very commonly taught. A lot of, let's just say, money is made off the back of it, and in some respects, it is flawed. Then we're going to get stuck into the 4 tips, which are change posture and position, use the perch, get out of the seat, and perform a short exercise routine. But we're going to put a little bit more flesh on the bones as we work through. So what's the problem with sitting up straight? Well, number one, the body is built to move. So we've all seen a diagram similar to this with someone sat up straight, and as you can see here, you've got a tick to show good and you've got a cross to show bad. Now, this diagram here is worse than this diagram here if the body is stationary for a long period of time. But both of these are flawed for the very idea that they are sat still for a prolonged period of time. The body is designed to move. The joints, the muscles, the ligaments, the tendons, the fascia, they all want to move. They don't like being stationary for a prolonged period of time, which makes both of these flawed if you're doing it for a prolonged period of time. What we have to understand is that we have to move. And as you know, as I've mentioned in the previous slide in the introduction, that the body needs to move, and that the 4 principles or 4 tips for pain-free sitting are there, and they're all involving some degree of movement. So what we have to be able to do is we have to be able to either one, move whilst we're sat down, or be able to move throughout the day. Which leads me on to the first tip, which is change posture / position. Now, as you can see in this diagram, we've got sat up straight here, but you can see he's just sat forward ever so slightly off the back of the seat. Here he's sat back. Here he's forward on the seat. Here he's sort of forward on the the sitting part of the seat, let's say. So we've got all these different positions. Now, if you go and speak to certain people, they'll say you shouldn't be crossing your legs, you shouldn't be sort of slouching in the seat. But what you are doing by changing posture and position, muscles are moving for a period of time. What then is happening is it's spreading the stress around. So what will be happening here is stress will be spread in certain areas. As he leans back, it will be taken off certain areas of the back. As he leans forward, it will be taken off certain areas around the front. As he puts one leg across this way, he's going to be moving the hips, which is going to be spreading the load onto the other side. As he then changes his legs, it's going to change back onto this side as the leg goes across. You can see leaning to one side is going to take the stress away from here. Then if he comes over to this side, it's going to take the stress away from here. So what we're doing is we're spreading the stress around the torso. If we sit still, it concentrates it all into the same area. And this is something that we want to be able to avoid. Is moving away from these static postures. So whilst you are sat down, part of the goal is to change position or change the posture that you're in whilst you're sat down. Tip number 2 is use what I call the perch. And all you're doing is you're perching on the edge of the seat here. Now, what is that doing with regards to your sitting posture? Now, as I've mentioned, if you're sat for a prolonged period of time, slouching, and you're going to stay in the slouch position, that is, then it's not that effective. It's better to sit up straight. So what you can do is use the perch to be able to keep you more upright. Now, what is the perch doing? Well, the perch essentially is keeping the pelvis level. As soon as you come back in the seat, and if I draw a very sort of poorly drawn seat here, if we go back into the seat, what tends to happen is the pelvis will tilt backwards. So here, the pelvis is level. Here it's tilting backwards. You've got my legs coming off and then there. Now what happens when you tilt the pelvis backwards? You're more likely to round the spine. As soon as you bring it level, automatically, because the pelvis controls where the spine goes, you get a more natural curve in the spine. And what you will find, it's much more difficult to slouch when you're perching like this. Now the reason I have one leg down is because that leg is holding the front of the pelvis and pulling it downward. This leg here is stopping me from falling off the seat. So I'm using this position to be able to maintain better posture through the pelvis, better posture through the spine. But that doesn't negate what we talked about in part number 1, which is change position and posture whilst you sit. But use the perch to be able to avoid the slouching posture a little bit more whilst you are changing position using tip number 1. Tip 3 is get out of the chair. Now we want to do that at regular intervals, at a convenient time, and you can also take a walk with it. Now to add a little bit more to that, and to bring a little bit more context to it, what do we mean by regular intervals? Now if you suffer with something like back pain, or even if you get neck pain or shoulder pain or upper back pain, then we want to be getting out of the chair before the pain comes on. So for example, if you know, just write in here, pain. So if you know that comes on after 5 minutes, you just set a little timer by you and you just kind of get the time at which it comes on. Let's just say it's 5 minutes. What we want to be doing is getting up between 3 and 4 minutes. So we want to be doing that. That's going to get us out of pain. So we're getting up out of the chair. What we can then do is what we're going to talk about next, which is do a little exercise routine, which could include obviously some exercises. It could include some stretches. But what we can also do is just take a walk. Now that could be around the desk. That could be out of the room and up the corridor and back. That could be around the office. It could be, wherever. But if you're doing it every 5 minutes, obviously you don't want to be walking that far because then you're going to be spending a lot of time away from the desk. But we do want to be getting up regularly and preferably before pain sets in, before we start to move. So we want to be moving before the pain comes on. Now, I talk about regular intervals, but mostly at a convenient time. Now, a common one is if you're on the phone. You can get up, you can stand up. You can do it after you've done and completed all your emails or whatever it is. So you can complete a task, then you can do it. But if you are in pain, then it is a good idea to try and at least move, change posture and position before the pain sets in. So tip number 3 is getting out of the chair, do it at regular intervals or at a convenient time, and at least take a short walk. And then tip number 4 is perform a short exercise routine. Now again, as I mentioned before, with regards to regular intervals, you don't have to perform this every single time. So if you are getting up, let's just say every 10 minutes for argument's sake, and that means you will get up sort of 5 to 6 times per the hour. So what you might do is you might get up and just change position, change posture, change position for the first 20 minutes, so the first 2 times. That gets you through those first 2 times. Then when you get to, so that's 10 minutes and 20 minutes, so you get through those. So you then get to 30 minutes. What you then might do is take a walk and just walk around the office, walk down the corridor, walk back, get back in the seat. That'll take you a couple of minutes. Then you continue your work. Then you might just change posture and position for the next 2, so that's 40 minutes and 50 minutes. And then once every hour, what you might do is just perform some simple exercises, which I've got some examples here. This isn't a hard and fast rule. I'm not saying you have to complete a side plank, a bridge, an adductor stretch, and a hip flexor stretch. I'm just using these as examples. You could include squats if you wanted to. You could have the arms reaching over your head. You could be adding in other stretches to stretch other muscles. You could be stretching your neck. So with regards to these 4 tips, it's not a hard and fast rule. It's using the tips and finding the best strategy for you based on these four tips. So it might be that you want to change posture and position for the first 10 minutes, and then you perform a couple of stretches at the next 10 minutes, at 20 minutes. Then you perform another posture change position at 30. Then you do some exercises. Then you get up for a walk, so on and so forth. But it's finding what's best for you. Or it could be that a certain day requires certain things, or you're having a particularly busy day, so you're only going to change your posture and your position. You're not going to do your exercise, but you're going to do that, say, at lunchtime. So there's no hard and fast method or strategy for it. It's using these principles to the best of your ability to be able to essentially, the one fundamental thing here is to keep your body moving and keep blood flowing through the muscles, keep fluid flowing through the muscles, keep the lymph flowing through the muscles to remove any toxins, but also to move the muscles, ligaments and tendons, because that's what they are built to do. They are built to move, and that's what they do best. So it's very much using these principles in that way. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully it's given you a little bit of guidance, a better understanding, some knowledge and some skills to be able to apply next time you're sat at your desk and you're thinking about if you're going to be painful or not. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Hall Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.